Get all my streaming stuff started here. I think I'm recording. Okay, good to go. Just a second. No, I'm gonna tell you about that. in just a second. Okay, so tonight, y'all, we are tying a Seaducer. For those of you who don't know the history of a Seaducer, it was created by a guy named Homer Rhodes back in the 40s. And he was a commercial snook fisherman. And he created this fly to fish commercially in the Northeast for snook. And it became really a popular pattern around saltwater fishermen. And Chico Fernandez, famous guy from the 70s, or 80s, 90s, 2000s, written several books. He popularized it and renamed it a Seaducer back in the 80s. And so since then, it's been known as a Seaducer, or Seaducer rather, excuse me. Could be the other too, I'm not totally sure. But a lot of variety in how we're going to fly it, or how we're going to tie it. I'm going to tie an olive because it shows up pretty well on the camera here. Of course, any combination of color that you want. We have purple here. Some of you may have white. We got a little red. It also has optional flash on it. So as much flash as you care to use. This copy does not have any flash on it. So it's totally up to you whether you tie in flash or not. Also, another option on the flash is you may notice this flash is tied inside of the feathers. So the flash is tied on first and then the tail feathers. Whereas this copy, the tail is tied in first and then the flash. It just depends on what look you want. We're going to tie it like this. But you may see some YouTube videos where they tie the flash on first and it puts the flash inside the tail. So it's just kind of personal preference. And of course, this is 4 saddle hackle feathers. And for the tail, you want to pick some that are relatively narrow. That's not a great example, but as straight as you can find and fairly narrow like those. And for the hackle, you want something thicker and wider like this feather. This would not, I mean, you could use it for a tail. It'd just be a lot wider tail. It depends on, and it'd be fine for like a size 1 or 2 hook. The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and we're going to prep our 4 tail feathers. And here, and I didn't send y'all one of these on the Zoomers, but this is a 2.5 inch long piece of paper. So if you've got a ruler handy, we're going to cut these tail feathers 2.5 inches from the tip. We're going to cut them off at 2.5 inches. So we're going to cut them off there. And then second step of prep, so we have it cut off, is we're going to pull out the last 1/4, 3/8 of an inch of the feather barbs, and then cut them off short like that. And you can see there, yeah, there you go. You can see they have a little barb sticking out. So go ahead and do that to 4 of your feathers and just lay them aside. So we'll have 4 cut to a 2.5. Now, if you don't have a ruler handy, it's about 1, 2.5 hook lengths total. So from the front of the hook to the back, a full length and about 1/2 another. That's 2.5 inches. Okay, let's get those cut. Strip the little barbs out. So we have like that. Whoops, there we go. And again, when you're picking your saddle hackle for the tail, you want it straight's not really critical. It just makes a neat looking fly. Because once it gets in the water, it's going to get wet. Have some really good, that saddle hackle has really good action in the water. And this fly being unweighted will run just under the surface of the water. And then we'll start. This takes as long to prep the tails as it does to tie the fly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get a hook in the vise. This is almost any hook will work for this. This is a Gamakatsu B10S and a size 4. I've tied a lot of them for saltwater on Mustad 34007s and 2, like for redfish. It's a stainless hook, coated stainless hook. So the old Mustad 34007, or I think it's SR 71 something is the new number on it. Anyway, it's the Mustad standard saltwater hook in size 2. But this is also a really good freshwater pattern. So we're going to tie it on a B10S. And since I'm tying olive, I'm going to use olive thread. I'm using 140 denier ultra thread, but almost any thread will work. Now 70 denier probably won't give you enough strength to really bear down on it. And so go ahead and lay down a thread base on your hook back to B10S. The bend starts pretty quickly on a B10S, as you can see here. So really kind of about halfway between the barb and the tip and the point of the hook is where we want to stop. Okay. And then bring your thread back up. I want a little bit of a gap between the point, about a hook eye gap between the point of the hook and where my thread's hanging. Because we want to tie those feathers up toward the front just a little bit. And by doing that, we sometimes can get away with only one saddle hackle to do the hackle in the front. Sometimes it takes 2. It just depends on how long your hackle is in the front. So we tie in 2 on each side of the hook. And you'll notice that they have a slight curvature to them. You want to line them up where the 2 where the curvature matches, like mine do. If one's going one way and one's going the other, just flip them to where the curvature matches. And I like to tie these where that curvature faces away from the hook shank. So basically the feather flares out at the back instead of flaring in.
You want to flare down and flare up?
It doesn't matter to me, John. I mean, I don't think it matters at all. I generally tie mine where they're like this, whether the bend is down a little bit, but that slight curve goes out. And so you just line your 2 hooks up. A black shirt's hard to see. I go lighter. I thought it'd be better, but it's kind of hard to see.
Green instead of white.
Yep. I should have done a white feather. Yep. I'll do the next copy in white. So line up those 2 and line it up where, zoom in a little bit here if I can. Yep, there we go. Line it up where your thread is just at the base of the part you've cleared here. And it should be semi-parallel. And we take a loose wrap, take a couple of more loose wraps, and then start taking some tighter wraps. That helps keep it from rolling around the hook, so it's kind of lined up, as you can see, with the hook shank. Now, the guys on the internet, you'll see them, theirs are 2 perfectly splayed out, everything's lined up. Well, let me tell you, that's a pain to do on this fly. So I'd never really worry about how closely they're aligned or how parallel. I try to get them there, but usually there's one may be flat, one may be angled, but when it gets in the water, that kind of random angle of those feathers really gives it some good action. So I have those 2 tied down, and so now I'll take my thread back to the base of that feather right there, because I'm going to do the same thing with the feathers on this side. I'm going to take my other 2 and tie them on the near side of the hook. And again, you try to get them lined up. See, those two are not lined up. They're splayed opposite each other. So I don't want that. I want to flip it over. And now they're laying flat against each other. And that curvature I'm going to tie where it's away from the hook shaft. Again, a couple of loose wraps. A tighter wrap. And you'll see I have this top one kind of laid a little bit flat instead of down on the side. That's perfectly okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly parallel. It'll fish really just fine. But you can twist on them, and that's cleaner than most of the ones I tie. So that's kind of what, if you look top down on your fly, that's sort of what they should look like. And again, if they want to spin around the hook on you and they're one's on top, one's on the bottom, one's on the side, that's okay, because it'll fish maybe even better that way. Flip, Peter, Mark, y'all doing okay?
Yes, sir.
There, hanging in there.
All right.
We're hanging.
We're
Peter,
hanging.
this ought to be good for some of that lake fishing you're doing up there. It's like it'll run probably less than 6 inches, or around 6 inches under the surface once it gets wet.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah. All right, now it's time for flash. And the amount of flash is totally a personal thing. This is probably a little more than I usually use, but who cares? It'll be fine. Now, the way I like to do the flash on this, I want to take my thread just a bit forward of where the base of my feather is, kind of past the tips of those feather shafts, anywhere up in here. And roughly I have 6 strands here. I'm going to take one of those out. I think that's a little too much. That's kind of a Mike Carlin amount of flash there. All right. And roughly in the middle, I'm going to fold it under.
Are you double
Yeah. I've got 5 strands.
How long is this?
This piece I just took a full foot long strand, cut it. You can cut that in half and have 2. You can do 2 flies out of that. So I'm on about the middle here. I'm going to wrap it under the shaft of the hook like that. And my thread's behind it. And then all I have to do is lay it down, take a couple of wraps, and then I can take my 2 halves and separate them down each side like that. And then I can hold them and then wrap over them like that. And now they go down each side. Each side. If you're really dexterous, have a lot of dexterity in your fingers, you can keep a finger between the 2 halves and pull it back tight, but I'm not quite that. And we want to cut it just a hair about the same length as the tail, maybe just a little bit longer. So now you have feather or flash going down each side of the tail. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, this is an optional way of doing it. You could have tied the flash on first, then tied your feathers on, if you want the flash to be inside the tail and a little more subtle. Okay, we're gonna give everybody a little chance to trim it just about the same length, or maybe a tad longer than the tail. And that's probably too much flash. I don't know. It's for fresh water is probably fine, but
It's no water, that's got close.
it does. And this is crystal flash that we're using. Polar flash works real well. Just plain old flash of works as well too. Just the smaller flash, not the saltwater stuff. But crystal flash has that nice Christmas light look to it. Okay, tails and flash on. All right. Find one of your larger feathers, something like this one. And some of the copies you'll see on the internet, and I tied one just so you see what it looks like. This one actually, I wrapped all the way up into the marabou on the feather. This is the marabou portion, this fluffy part down here. And you'll see some on the internet where people do that. And I'm sure it just doesn't look as good to me, but I'm sure it looks great in the water. But so since I don't like it, I'm not going to do it. So I'm gonna pull that marabou off. That's right, it's my flies. Cajun Ninja Cook says you do you.
The same color that we use.
I am, but I generally tie something different, like this is red and white, or this is chartreuse and white. You can tie purple and olive. You can tie purple and red. Yeah, yeah. So I stripped the marabou and I have now a hackle feather. And we all just kind of like we did with the base of our tail feather, we want to pull these fibers down as straight as we can get them. Just run your thumb down, because if you've ever tried the Palmer saddle hackle, it is a pain and it doesn't palmer well. That's why it's cheap. It's not like nice like grizzly saddle for woolly boogers or something like that. This Chinese saddle hackle is not.
Well, how long would these be used? Right?
Just I wouldn't cut it. I'd strip that marabou off. Because that'll give you something.
Okay.
That'll give you that stem to hold to as we wrap it. So that's what I have. Mine's roughly, it doesn't matter. Mine's, by the time I cut it, it's going to be about 4 inches of actual hackle. Now, likewise, you'll notice this feather also has a curve to it. I want to we're going to tie in by the tip, and I want to tie it in by that tip where the curve, the concave part of it, is toward the hook. Now, once you start wrapping saddle hackle, it twists like the dickens, so it's likely to twist the other way. So, but it doesn't really matter. But we're going to start it with the curve toward the hook. And I pull the feathers back because this is really fragile up here at the front, that piece. So I'm going to tie in right at the base of that. So I'm tied in right at the tip. And I'm going to pull that tip back and take a couple of wraps in front of it. I want to make sure it doesn't slip off. And then I'm going to trim that tag end of the feather off. Just like that. So now I've tied in by the tip. See, it's already starting to look messy. Okay, move the thread forward to roughly somewhere behind the eye. We hope we'll get that far with it. So I move my thread forward to behind the eye. And then we want to try to twist that saddle hackle where that curved section is toward the back of the hook. And we just start wrapping that hackle forward. Yep. And fairly close, almost touching wraps, but doesn't have to be touching. And if your hackle starts to, like mine is right here, if it starts to lay down on itself, reach down there and just kind of pull it straight up the shaft of the feather. So just kind of pull it up, just like that. Yeah, it's wanting to see. It really is a fairly messy hackle. But once it gets wet, it lays back nicely in the water. See, that did not work out good there. All right. Sometimes you may have to sweep it back and hold it back with your fingers to get it to wrap good. It has those long fibers that will want to trap each other. See, I think mine's actually twisted because I think my curve is now facing forward. But that's fine. Again, this stuff is so flexible. It's not like dry fly hackle where you really pay attention to which direction it is. This will lay back in the water just fine. And I lucked out on this one. It's enough feather to go all the way forward with it. Yeah. Sometimes you have to use two. And you just tie another one in, but if you do, you just tie another one in by the tip. And now, once I get here, I don't know if you're there yet, but I'm holding my stem. And this is why I like to peel that marabou off, because now I have clean stem to run my thread down against. I don't have all that marabou that'll trap around the eye of the hook and all that.
Hmm.
I'll take my thread and just do a couple of good wraps right behind, probably about 3 behind that stem. Pull that stem back and everything else back if I can. And just build a small head right in front. And reach in, cut that stem off close. Okay.
Ends up with my thread kind of towards the back of it.
And then I'm going to whip finish this. Just build a little thread head on it. What is it? Brought it back up to right behind the eye. Do your whip finish and trim, and if you have head cement, go ahead and use that on it. Oops. Clean the eye. Feather. Yeah, be sure you clean the eye out with your head cement.
Right.
Yeah, when the fish are biting the best, and you have to change flies, that's when you're going to grab the one that has glue in the eye. Okay. Here we go. Oh yeah, you could easily throw this on a full weight. It doesn't weigh anything. Now, if you catch a 10-pound fish on with this on the full weight, that might be a little more interesting.
Mhm.
Flip, you ever fish this in the salt?
No, I used them for bass.
Yeah. And they ride so high in the water. I mean, even they'll go right on top of a weed bed.
Yeah. Just depends on how patient you are if you want them to go down.
Yeah.
You know. They'll eventually sink.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lefty's deceiver or something. If you let it, or even like a bad hair day, which like Jim and I fish a whole lot, you have to kind of beat it on the water and get it wet before it starts to sink. But if you let it sink, it'll get on down there.
Yeah, squeeze it in the water like a sponge.
And that is it. Catch ties a version that he calls his SR71 Seaducer. And I think the only difference, y'all can correct me, those of you that know, is that instead of saddle hackle for the hackle, he uses schloppen, which is even more limber, and it lays back. The actual head will lay back probably this far to the back of the hook.
That's what I did.
Yeah, that's it. Hang on. Let me use schloppen on it. Let me spotlight yours real quick. Okay, there you go. That's our catch. What he calls his SR71 Seaducer. It's a lot. Sloppen's a lot thicker. And if you're going to buy hackle to do this, I'd say buy schloppen. I like the grizzly tail too. That's nice. Cool. Looks good. Real good. All right, how are we out there? Finish that one? It's only 7 o'clock. Can we tie one more? Let's tie another one. Okay. Let me grab some white. have some white hackle in my, maybe it'll show up better against this black shirt.
Next one, y'all hear ties, I'm going, I'll try to send something out. You can bring up there. Scissors you don't cut everything with. They're gonna use, craft first, and you gotta pull it, pull it. I'll have some. to use.
Okay, this is white Chinese saddle hackle.
Chinese chicken. Oh, why all of it's like that.
China, I'm sure. This is a pretty good package of it.
They eat in California because it says it on the back of the color.
You know, and saddle hackle is one of those things that if you don't have to mail order it, that you can pick it out. Because some bags have all feathers like this. And some bags have the nice straight ones like this that you can use.
What's the group? Gold. Chicken feathers.
Yeah, let's get us feathers prepped here. And you know, the length of the feathers, I have 2.5 inches, but here's a copy that has much longer feathers. So it just depends on what you like in your tail.
Does anybody want to red to put on something? You got something? Okay. All right.
I mean, like I said, this takes. You want some white, Ronnie? I brought some white.
He does white up there. We didn't have any white in the cases are swapping it for all parts.
I don't know if he uses it for the tail or not. I think he does. He's in Alabama right now, so I don't know.
Call from that group.
No, I hadn't. Okay, I got my white all prepped here. As you can see, this is a messy slide. Now, the white thread I'm using is Vivas power thread. If you've never used the 140 near power thread, it is by far my favorite 140. You use it too, don't you, Jim? Vivas power thread, yeah. It's probably half again as strong as the ultra thread in 140. It's not GSP, it's still nylon thread that's that you can split, do everything with. All right. Mm-hmm. Yep, let's lay down a thread base again. And give us about that eye length gap there between the point of the hook threads where it's hanging.
Punch across the street.
Mhm, sounds like it. Okay, get 2 of your feathers and line them up where the curves are matched. Lay it, try to keep them right on top of each other. Lay it right against the hook shank. Couple of loose wraps. before you tighten it down, check it and see that's actually pretty parallel there. It usually doesn't turn out like that. Then wrap to the front and then come back. So I started here at the base of my feather, wrap to the front, and then brought the thread back.
It's settled backwards.
Hmm?
It's settled backwards and swap.
And slop, yeah. Ties the flash in first, yeah, because the old ones I have that catch top this fly a while back, and the old ones I have had the flash tied in first. And again, it's just this total personal preference on that. Just how you like your flash to look. Yeah, if they kind of get out of alignment, just kind of move them around a little bit and it will. Silver, where's the silver flash? Is it here? Yeah. Pearl flash. A little less this time than this one. All right, this time I have 4 strands of crystal flash about 6 inches long. And then just like before, I'll wrap it under the hook shank in front of my thread where my thread's hanging. See, I've held it right there. And then before you start pulling back on it, give your thread some tension. That way, so the flash now can't go to the back. So I can pull the flash down and just wrap it right down each side. And while you have it in your fingers, go ahead and trim it. Just tail length. What am I going to use? Purple.
So, like,
Olive, purple, and that's it.
and they're real right there.
Yeah, this is my UV2 red here. It's still film. Gonna do a really good job. I'll just use olive. I've got olive.
What you looking for?
No, it's back here. No, is it? Okay, good. Yeah, let me try something. This pack I have brought from home. Not real good for this. Oh, this is better. Much better than what I brought from home. Yeah. Pick a feather out here. I had one and lost it. Here it is. All right, and again, I'm going to pull all that marabou off. Even a little bit of stem to hold. Take my thread back to the base of my feathers, or just in front of the base of my tail feathers. Preen out my hackle. This one's actually behaving a good bit better than that other one did. And then I tie it in by the tip. at the tip. Just a couple of wraps. Then pull that tip back, a couple of wraps in front, and move your thread all the way up to behind the eye. Trim that piece out. Yeah, yep. Okay, and then we just start wrapping. And again, I tied it in with that curved side toward the shaft of the hook. But like I say, it twists so bad, it doesn't really matter. Oh, this is an awful piece of hackle. It's really twisting on itself.
Do you think the half fire is over the end of that before it ties or help with twisting?
No, I
Because
don't
then
think so.
turns the thing,
So, matter of fact, I like to
might
be
make
able
it
to
work.
I like to be able to twist it with my fingers. Now here's a good example. I'm not going to have enough hackle to get to the front. I don't think I might. Let's see. Yeah, I think I will. But I think I'm going to go ahead and tie it off. Go ahead and tie it off, break it. Since what I have here is another, as an olive, I'm just going, I need a little more feather at the front of mine. I'm just going to go ahead and grab this olive and put it there. Make it a little bit easier. I'm going to sweep that. Yeah. Grab my olive. No, I have a short piece of olive. You can see it's not very long.
Hmm.
We'll tie it in right there at the front. Trim it. I'm not going to need many turns of it. So. If you have to use two feathers like this, make sure on your second one you wrap it right up against the first one. Several wraps right against it. Okay, I'm to the front. Well, that looks like it's better once we tie it off. I hope.
Sure hope water,
What's that?
I'm sure hope water makes it.
Yeah. Makes it look better in the water. I should have used chartreuse in the front. That would have been good. Red and chartreuse. Red and black or something. Yeah. Yeah, not bad. A little bit of head cement and when you get rolling on this fly, it's really about a 10-minute tie, so they go together pretty quickly. I'm like you on this one, Chris. I hope the water smooths it out. My flash is all over the place, but that's crystal flash for you. Okay. Peter, how we doing?
Great fly. I can't wait to try it next month.
Okay, let's see what you got. Show me one. I've spotlighted you.
Oh, I don't know. Can you? Whoops.
Yep, oh, there we go. Oh, nice. Is that orange or red? That's red. isn't it?
Red. You
Yeah.
sent me red. Great
Oh, it is.
color.
Good. Yeah, I sent you some. I didn't have the material, so last week I sent yours out of the white and red that I have. Yeah, it should be good.
Great fly.
Good. And yeah, it'll work. It's a good one. It'll be good for pickerel too.
Oh, no, I
Pickerel.
love pickerel.
Of course, pickerel, a lot of, almost any good colored streamer is good for pickerel.
Yeah,
All right, good deal.
great fly.
Flip, did you tie another one?
Mhm.
All right, wait, let me see. Oh, yeah, I really like that. I've never tied him with that grizzly hackle for the tail. I'm gonna do that. I really like that. Nice. Nice. Mark,
Thank
did you tie or just watching?
Oh, I tied a couple. I'm doing LSU colors.
LSU color? Oh, yeah. Purple and chartreuse. I like it. I like it.
Nice tie, nice fly. Thank you, Bill.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's a good one. It's, we thank Catch for bringing this one to us. I mean, it's definitely an old standard for the saltwater, so.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wasn't that fly originally called the Whistler?
You know, the thing, everything I can find out on the Flip is that it was called the Homer Road Streamer.
Oh,
Hmm.
And it may have been called something else before Chico Fernandez called it a Seaducer. I don't know.
Feather duster, called the hacker streamer.
Who did? Homer Roads?
No, this is like going to from 1880. And then Tom Mifflin called it I think called it feather duster, other names. But he goes back to about 1880.
Does it?
Yeah. well, right now.
Wow.
And
Wow.
you know, if you tied it in like correct colors, it'd be a great shrimp imitation of salt.
But the Whistler was when they put the eyeballs on it,
Mhm.
and when it would come by, and you cast it,
You could hear it whistling. Yeah, I hate to try to glue eyes on that, but
well, I put lead eyes on it.
yeah, you could do that. Bead chain.
Yeah, they work fine.
Yep. We, any of y'all, Mark, Peter, Flip, ever fished a Crelex minnow?
No.
No, I have not.
It is, Jim and I kind of discovered them last week. And it's tied totally with flash.
yeah.
Really?
Like either,
This is green.
polar flash is better than flashabou for it. And I fished it last week and it worked really, really well. So we're going to add that to the rotation for next year.
Crelex minnow, really?
Yeah, Kreelex. Yeah, Crelex.
I tie those for packing paddle.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah, silver, gold, and olive.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Crelex.
Yeah, and I
Crelex.
tied it in silver and gold for last week. And man, the white bass tore it up.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Oh,
love it.
really? Two different colors.
Yeah. And I put one together that's kind of we may put it on the rotation if it works well. It's an articulated fly. It's a mashup. It's basically two Crelexes articulated together, but then the front of it is like a bad hair day with craft fur going back over the front of it.
Huh.
And so I'm gonna work on it some this fall and fish it, see how good it does. Primarily for like gar, because like gar, they'll bite the side of it, and if it's not articulated, you may miss them half the time. Still miss them anyway, but try it for gar. All right, gentlemen, I think that's it for the night. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
All
Thank you,
right.
Bill.
All right, good night, y'all.
All right, good night. Thank you.
Let's go.